The footage begins in silence. A low-resolution frame from a dated security system shows the concrete hallway of a suburban house, faintly lit by a single bulb. The timestamp reads April 17, 2021, 2:14 a.m. A man in his late 50s appears at the edge of the frame, carrying a tray of food. He unlocks a heavy door, steps inside, and disappears. When he re-emerges, he looks directly at the camera, unaware that it is recording again for the first time in years. The man is Edward Grayson, a retired electrician and widower who has lived in the same two-story house on the outskirts of Marion, Ohio since the late 1990s. To his neighbors, he was private but polite. He mowed his lawn on Fridays, never missed garbage day, and helped fix porch lights for anyone who asked. He had no criminal record, no history of violence. At least, that was what people believed until the old security system that he had installed himself decades earlier malfunctioned and automatically uploaded backup footage to a cloud server. The new homeowner who purchased the adjacent property, a systems engineer, helped Edward's niece access the house's Wi-Fi after repeated outages. In doing so, she stumbled upon a folder labeled Archive Basement. Inside were hundreds of short video clips spanning almost 2 decades. The first investigators arrived at 10:47 a.m. on April 19th after the niece, Lavra Bennett, placed a quiet but urgent call to the local sheriff's office. Her statement was simple: "There's someone locked in my uncle's basement." Deputies entered through the side door and immediately noticed signs of structural reinforcement: a new lock welded to an old door frame, a heavy steel bar bolted across it. Inside the basement they found a single room, roughly 3 by 4 meters, lined with soundproof insulation. A narrow cot, stacks of canned food, a small sink, and notebooks filled with neat handwriting. In the far corner sat Anna Grayson, Edward's daughter, now 38 years old. Her eyes squinted at the light as officers helped her up the stairs. She spoke little. Her voice was hoarse, her posture rigid from years of confinement. Within hours, the house was surrounded by patrol cars, evidence units, and reporters. Neighbors gathered at the edge of the property, trying to reconcile the quiet man they knew with the story spreading through the news. Detective Rachel Torres, head of the county's Major Crimes Division, took charge of the case. Her first impression was confusion. Anna had been declared missing in 2001, after a brief trip to Cleveland. Her father had filed the report himself, tearfully telling police that she had vanished while visiting friends. The file was closed in 2003 when no evidence surfaced. Now, 20 years later, the missing person had been found alive in the very house from which she was reported missing. At the station, Anna told investigators that after her mother's death, Edward had become increasingly controlling. He removed the phone line, limited her contact with friends, and insisted the outside world was unsafe. What began as isolation gradually turned into captivity. He convinced her that law enforcement blamed her for her mother's death in a car accident, and that leaving would mean arrest or institutionalization. Over time, fear and dependency kept her there more effectively than any chain. Detectives pieced together a timeline using evidence from the basement and decades of digital records. The room contained no visible restraints, but it had been meticulously maintained. There was a functioning ventilation system, electricity, and a small television connected only to a VCR. The notebooks documented daily routines: meals, temperature, chores, and brief entries like "saw snow through vent" or "he says soon we can go outside." The recovered footage was even more revealing. Dozens of clips showed Edward delivering food, medicine, and books, always in silence. Occasionally, Anna appeared in frame, older each year, quietly taking the tray. In later videos, she looked directly into the lens, as if aware of being watched. Forensic teams examined the hardware. The cameras were dated but functional. Edward had spliced the system into the home's electrical wiring, preventing any easy disconnection. The automatic upload that exposed him had been triggered only because a circuit failed, diverting power through a newer router installed by his niece 2 weeks earlier. Investigators interviewed the surrounding community. None had seen Anna since her late teens. When asked, most assumed she had moved away long ago. A neighbor recalled seeing Edward at the grocery store buying large amounts of canned food for hurricane season. Another remembered that the basement windows were always sealed, even in summer. At the sheriff's office, Detective Torres confronted Edward with the footage. He remained calm. "She's my daughter," he said. "I kept her safe." He claimed that Anna suffered from severe anxiety and refused to leave the basement voluntarily. When asked why he hadn't sought medical help, he replied, "The doctors would have locked her away. I did what I had to do." The interviews lasted 3 days. Gradually, his story unraveled. He admitted falsifying portions of the missing person report, intercepting letters from extended family, and cashing government benefit checks issued in Anna's name. He maintained that no harm had come to her, that the basement was comfortable and secure. The prosecution later described his behavior as a form of coercive imprisonment, a sustained campaign of isolation and manipulation that replaced physical restraints with psychological dependency. The notebook supported this interpretation. Repeated entries showed her seeking approval, apologizing for imagined wrongs, and thanking him for protection. As the investigation expanded, 2 other individuals briefly became suspects. One was Harold Mason, an old friend who had helped Edward build the basement extension in 2000. He told detectives he believed it was a storm shelter. The other was a local contractor who supplied the soundproofing materials. He, too, thought the work was for a home studio. Both were cleared. The key forensic evidence came from digital timestamps on the security files. Analysts at the State Crime Lab reconstructed a nearly continuous record from 2001 to 2021, confirming that Anna had never left the house for more than a few minutes at a time, always accompanied by her father. The data also revealed periodic power cuts, during which footage stopped times that coincided with police welfare checks over the years. Each time, Edward had claimed his daughter was visiting relatives. When the case reached trial in late 2022, the courtroom was silent as prosecutors played a single minute of recovered video. In it, Edward speaks for the first time on camera. "You're safe down here. The world's gone mad out there." His voice is steady, almost tender. The jury watched Anna, seated across the room, lower her head and cover her ears. The defense argued diminished capacity, citing Edward's paranoia and grief after his wife's death. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with delusional disorder and obsessive, compulsive traits but concluded he understood his actions were wrong. The trial lasted 6 weeks. On December 14, 2022, he was found guilty of kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, fraud, and obstruction of justice. He received a 35-year sentence. Anna spent the next months in a rehabilitation facility outside Columbus. Therapists described her progress as slow but steady. She learned to walk longer distances, to tolerate open spaces, to hold normal conversations. She declined media interviews, preferring anonymity. The local community set up a scholarship fund in her name for survivors of coercive control. Detective Torres visited her once in early spring. Anna handed her one of the old notebooks. On the final page was a single line written shortly before her discovery. "I think he's getting tired. Maybe the door will open soon." The narrator's voice would close the documentary softly over a slow pan of the empty basement. For 20 years, one room held a secret that an entire town never imagined could exist. It was not chains or locks that kept her there, but fear and belief. In the end, a simple malfunction, a flicker of electricity, broke the silence. Sometimes the smallest failures in a system are what finally bring the truth to light. Outside, the house remains empty. The basement door has been sealed with concrete. The neighborhood has returned to quiet routines, but people still pause when they pass the corner lot with the boarded windows. For them, it isn't just a crime scene. It's a reminder of how ordinary walls can hide extraordinary darkness, and how one recording, buried for decades, can rewrite the story of an entire life.